But we will proceed with Senator Shaheen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'm very pleased to be part of this bicameral, bipartisan show of support for Ukraine and opposition to the Wagner Group, and appreciate the work of the Helsinki Commission in bringing this hearing forth today. I'm convinced on the foreign terrorist designation. I'm a co-sponsor of legislation in the Senate that's bipartisan that would do that. I think the sooner we do it, the better. The question that I have is a number of questions more about the Wagner Group. In the Armed Services Committee in the Senate last week, we heard testimony from one of the witnesses that there is growing friction between Prigozhin and the Wagner Group and Putin and the regular military. Can anybody here speak to that and how you see that being resolved? And I'm sure most people here saw the video of Prigozhin asking for more support. So I don't know who would like to respond to that.
Well, I think it's, no one understands Putin's mind except for Putin, so it's very difficult to know what's really going on. Certainly, Prigozhin has been poking the Ministry of Defense. He's been, very aggressively speaking out against Shoigu and Gerasimov, the leaders, really, of the war. But it's unclear what Putin thinks about it. I've seen articles kind of saying it both ways, that Putin likes this type of competition, but also that Prigozhin might have political aspirations. So I think it's quite unclear. There's a lot of palace intrigue, but it's hard to say definitively whether there's a rift between Putin and Prigozhin. He certainly continues to act in Putin's interests.
Does everybody agree with that? There's no.
I would just add, I think there's an interesting development with the possible creation of another PMC group, PMC Gazprom. And I think Putin has seen the success of the Wagner Group, but also Putin probably recognizes that Prigozhin is increasingly becoming an internal threat. When you have a private military company or a terrorist group like Wagner that has more than 60,000 members, with an arsenal of weapons and aircraft, as the chairman showed us, fighting aircraft, that's potentially a threat, internal threat. And I think the creation of the PMC and Gazprom could be one way to think about the future of how the U.S. Or how the Russian Federation projects power through PMCs in the future, should Prigozhin and the Wagner Group fold.
I think you testified, Mr. Blazakis, that they have been recruiting in the U.S. Do we have any sense of the success that they've had recruiting?
Thankfully, I've not seen any reflections of success of individuals who are American citizens who have willfully joined the Wagner Group. So it's not been successful, but I would agree with Justyna that they're Hollywood-like productions. You can go see some of their movies, and their ratings on IMDb is quite problematic, and I think they're trying to continue to make inroads. If nothing else, they try to polarize the American public as it relates to its support to Ukraine during this time.
And can you speak to the success that they've had in other places recruiting? There have been reports that they've been recruiting in the Balkans, in particular in Serbia. That was denied by the Serbs, but do we have any credible evidence of the success they're having?
Yeah, no, the Department of State has gone out there to Serbia to specifically bring this issue up. It is a real issue. Serbia does have individuals that have joined the Wagner Group. Interestingly enough, there have been multiple reports that former Afghan special operators trained by the United States have also been recruited by the Wagner Group. The Wagner Group has also made an effort to recruit from Syria and Iraq individuals into the fold. So they've had some success recruiting on the outside of the Russian Federation. They don't just have to rely on recruitment from prisons.
And I'm not sure who wants to answer this, maybe you, Ms. Gudzowska, but you talked about the theatrics of the Wagner Group, and they've been very successful at disinformation. So what should we be doing to respond to that disinformation much more successfully than we have to date?
I think we need to counter that disinformation. I think that's critical. When I was at the UN, we had the rise of ISIS, and there was a coalition formed to combat ISIS, and that coalition focused on its financing the movement of fighters, which Jason was just talking about, and the propaganda. So there needs to be a coalition, a global effort to counter its propaganda, because it is so good at propaganda, and the perception that Wagner and Russia are a successful private military group, successful against fighting counterinsurgencies and counterterrorism, also needs to be countered, because that's actually false. We saw them routed in Mozambique, and in Mali, the terrorism threat has actually grown since Wagner entered the picture. So I think we need to make an effort to counter that propaganda that they are a successful outfit by highlighting their failures and highlighting the atrocities, the steep price that these countries pay to get Wagner in. And of course, the resource predation, the economic predation they engage in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator Shaheen. And